Alright guys, we are back with another comparison, trying to get these out as fast as possible for you guys to get to everybody's requests. Just bear with me here. So the 8 Plus, a lot of 8 Plus users are interested in upgrading here. We got the 13 Pro, and you can pick the 8 Plus up for 270 bucks. I have that link down below, and the 13 Pro is going to cost you $1,000 bucks. So let's just go over hardware real quick. We do have glass and metal on both of these phones, so they do have that full premium design. On the 8 Plus, we do have IP67 dust and water resistant, and then we have IP68 on the 13 Pro. As far as design, you are getting a much better looking design on the 13 Pro on the front and back, so that'll be a nice refresh for you. And as far as the size, the 8 Plus is definitely taller than the 13 Pro, but the 13 Pro is thicker and much heavier. You're gonna notice this phone being heavier right off the bat. So I do note that you got these giant cameras on here now, dual camera, triple camera on here. And just to go over the buttons here, it's pretty much the same layout: mute, vibration switch, volume rockers, down stereo speakers, and then you also have your power button, and the power button is much bigger on the 13 Pro. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the display. So as you can see, a big difference here. So with the iPhone 8 Plus, we do have a 5.5 inch Retina IPS display, and then it is a 1080p panel for a 140 ppi. On the 13 Pro, we have a Super Retina XDR OLED display, 120 Hz, and then that has HDR10, and then it's a 6.1 inch display, 1170 by 2532, 460 for the PPI. So everything about the 13 Pro's display is going to be much better. You're going from IPS to an OLED panel now, and definitely colors are going to be more color accurate. The 13 Pro's display is actually brighter, much brighter than the 8 Plus, so when you're outdoors, you'll really notice that. And also, you just have slimmer bezels on the 13 Pro, and I guess one advantage that the 8 Plus has is that it has no type of notch, so it just has, it has these chunky bezels, but there's no notch, so you might appreciate that. So the 8 Plus is not going to cut into content like on the 13 Pro here. But honestly, I think the display upgrade that you're getting with the 13 Pro with the 120 Hz is going to be excellent. When you're just scrolling and swiping, you will be able to notice that difference, and you really notice it on Instagram and stuff like that. You really will notice that 120 Hz. Like, it does look buttery smooth when you put them side by side. It'll be really hard for you to go back to, a 60 Hz panel. Alright, so both devices are running iOS 15 here. I will show you guys the Geekbench scores here. So you are getting a significant jump in speed here. So on the 8 Plus, we do have the Apple A11 chip on here, 64 gigs of storage on the base model and 3 gigs of RAM. And then on the 13 Pro, we do have the A15 chip with 128 gigs, so you are getting more storage on the base model, and then 6 gigs of RAM. As far as opening applications, you will notice obviously a bump up in speed. The 13 Pro opens things really quickly, but the 8 Plus is not. It's not like it's extremely slow or anything like that. But you will notice that speed difference again, along with that 120 Hz. Everything is going to feel much snappier here. Also, where you'll notice the big difference here is with gaming. So video games like PUBG and stuff like that, you will be able to play at max graphics on the 13 Pro, and when the update hits, the 13 Pro should get a 90 FPS option as well for PUBG, so you really see that difference there. But if you're a gamer, this is going to be a really big deal for you, because you're just going to get better graphics, better frame rates on pretty much everything. And you see the time difference when you open like a heavier game. It really starts to kick in there. Alright, so as you guys can see, the graphic performance here, extreme, and then you don't get the extreme anymore on the 8 Plus. you can see we can pretty much max everything out on the 13 here. And we're in. So again, I do have a gaming test for the 8 Plus. It still does a great job. Like I said, if you're a serious, gamer, you're definitely going to appreciate this upgrade. And I think I do have Antutu scores to show you guys. Yeah, so here are your Antutu scores as well. Alright, I got the speakers at max volume. Let's go ahead and hear them side by side. So you are getting a pretty nice speaker upgrade. You are getting louder and more clear sounding speakers, also with just more bass on the 13 Pro here. But the 8 Plus does not sound bad. It just sounds a little bit flat compared to the 13 Pro here. So you are getting a really nice speaker upgrade. So let's go ahead and talk about the additional features here. We do have Apple Pay, of course, on both of these phones, or NFC. And then we have sort of the debate, which really comes down to the person. So we have our Touch ID. Some people prefer Touch ID. Touch ID works flawlessly on the 8 Plus. I have no problems with it. Sometimes I even prefer it over Face ID. And then on the 13 Pro, you do have Face ID, which like I said, it really comes down to the person, especially, with the mask and stuff. Sometimes you don't want to use Face ID. You have to take the mask down. So it's nice to just, have Touch ID. I mean, not Touch ID, but Face Unlock. So it really comes down to the person. They both work great. I really think that Apple should really go back and just put Touch ID in the power button on the next iPhone, so you can just have two options instead of one option. I think that would be really good. But yeah, so you do have those on both, and both of these phones do have wireless charging as well. Alright, let's go ahead and talk about the camera. So I think this is a really good reason to upgrade, because you are getting a pretty good bump up in terms of image quality and video quality. So we'll start with the 8 Plus. It does have a dual camera setup, 12 megapixel standard and a 12 megapixel telephoto with 4K video, 24, 30, or 60 FPS, along with a 7 megapixel selfie cam at 1080p. The 8 Plus does take some pretty good photos and good lighting. I have no issues with the image quality for this price point. I think it does still a pretty good job. But compared to the 8 or the 13 Pro, one of the things I noticed about it was that it does get a little soft when you take it out of like good lighting conditions and stuff like that. So that is one thing that I noticed. But I'm telling you guys, the 8 Plus still takes pretty decent photos. But compared to the 13 Pro, which has a triple camera setup, it's got a 12 megapixel standard, 12 megapixel telephoto, and then a 12 megapixel ultra wide, and you also have a macro mode on the 13 Pro as well, which is really cool for close-up shots. You can shoot in 4K on the front and back, and then you also have 60 frames per second, 30, and then 24 on the back camera of the 13 Pro, and then 4K, 24, 25, 30, and 60 FPS. So the 13 Pro is going to take some really good photos. Like I said, it really shines in low light. You get an ultra wide now, you get a macro camera now, you get cinematic video now, or you can think of it as portrait mode video. You're getting a pretty significant upgrade as far as cameras. So I definitely, if you're thinking about upgrading and you want to know if the cameras are worth it, I do think they're definitely worth it. Alright, so let's talk about battery life here. So on the 13 Pro, you have a 3095 milliamp battery with 20 watt charging on here, and then you have your MagSafe, wireless charging stuff that they have on here. The 13 Pro actually has very good battery life, and again, this is coming from a light user. I don't do a ton of gaming, just videos and on social media from time to time. But this phone really lasts all day, so I have no issues. But on the 8 Plus, and again, me being a light user, I don't have battery issues with this phone. This phone still, I'm able to get through a day no problem with this phone either. So I'm sure you're going to get better battery life on the 13 Pro. But like I said, the 8 Plus still does a really good job with battery. So it does have a 2,691 milliamp battery, so slightly smaller battery life. And again, it varies on your battery health as well. So that could play a part. And then you have wireless charging on here too. So yeah, so the 8 Plus does a pretty good job with battery life still, but the 13 Pro, you are going to get, you know, a slight bump up in terms of screen on time here. So that is pretty much it, guys. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.